Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, I'm Anna. I'm a psychologist in training and I talk about real life applications to psychology. Today we're talking about the early red flags of abuse. And I do want to give a quick trigger warning here. If this is something that is sensitive to you or triggering, please take whatever time you need. Don't watch this if you worry about the effect that it'll have on you. And I will leave some resources down below if you are struggling, some hotlines for the issues that we'll be talking about today. To understand the early signs of abuse, you need to first understand how abuse works and why victims stay with their abusers once things get bad. Abuse is quite gradual in most cases. Most people would leave if the violence started right away. And so it really kind of trickles into something more over time where you're really not even noticing that it's starting to get worse. It's just that you're tolerating more and more higher amounts of abuse. You're just getting normalized in your relationship. It often results in some logistical difficulties of leaving. So because of the isolation, control, financial dependence, being worried about your kids or pets, people sometimes feel like they don't really have a choice in the matter or that their partner has made it really difficult to actually leave. It slowly diminishes your self-esteem. So the victim often asks themselves, why should I leave? I deserve this. Who would take me anyway? I'm worthless, because that's the effect of the emotional abuse on them. It's really deteriorated their self-esteem. So with that being said, here are some early red flags of abuse. And remember that red flag, as far as I'm concerned, if you think about like red, yellow, and green lights, red means stop. Once you get to the more severe or late stage forms of abuse, it's extremely difficult to leave because of the reasons I just mentioned. It takes victims usually 7 attempts to leave, about the same number as relapses in substance abuse. So this is something that is really difficult for people. And I also want to normalize that if it's something that's really difficult for you, because just know that you're not alone. You're not, sad for finding this difficult. It's actually quite common for people to try a lot of times to get out of these situations. Also, just keep in mind that the following are more for romantic relationships rather than other types of abuse. Abuse can look very different in a parent-child dynamic, friend-friend, boss-employee relationship, although you may notice some overlaps in those. So the first thing that I recommend people look out for is love bombing, which is basically they're bombing you with love. It's too much too soon. That's not really proportionate to how much they know you. So for example, they might send you lavish presents before you've even started dating. They might text you all day and all night. They might say things that suggest they're very committed to this relationship very early on. Things like, I want to marry you, I love you. One time a guy I wasn't even dating said, if we had kids, I'd want you to teach them Romanian. They're sort of setting the stage for getting you hooked, because when things get bad, they want you to remember the good old days and think that it's feasible to get back to those. I made the comparison with substance abuse, and it's very much like that first high that a lot of people chase that is really not realistic to ever feel again, because once you get it, then it's gone forever. In reality, the abuser will only treat you that way as long as it serves them. Once they actually have you hooked, once you're actually in the relationship with little motivation to leave, they don't care about treating you like a princess or prince anymore. Oftentimes, they will also start lowering your relationship boundaries through things like negging you, which is basically giving you a backhanded compliment, like, it's weird, you're really pretty even though you have like an unconventional face, or joking like, I would never cheat on you except maybe with insert celebrity name. It comes off as playful, where if you confront them about it, it's like, oh, I was just kidding around, I was just teasing. Really, it's intended to get you to tolerate increasingly rude, inappropriate, disrespectful speech from them and to sort of deteriorate your self-esteem. So they might compare you to other people. They might talk about other people inappropriately in front of you. Like this one time I was out on a date and my date started talking about how hot the waitress was. It's like, in what world is that appropriate to do? They might push your sexual boundaries or coerce you into certain acts, which in most cases does tend to escalate into full-blown assault as the relationship progresses. They might sexually objectify you or other people in the way that they speak about you. Double standards are another early red flag, where basically the rules are different for you than they are for them, often because of a male-female gender dynamic, but not always, of course. So for example, they have to have your phone password, but you can't have theirs. They can stay out late, but you can't. They can have friends of the opposite sex, but you can't. They can get drunk, but you can't get drunk. They can sleep with other people, but you can't sleep with other people. And the message that it sends is that you can't tell me what to do, but I can tell you what to do. It's that I'm better than you, because really, you're nothing. Then another early red flag is extreme jealousy and possessiveness, which usually leads straight into increasing control. I think most people struggle with feelings of jealousy towards their romantic partner, and I think that's fine. It's actually shown to evolutionarily help with male retention. But for abusive people, the jealousy becomes less about fear and more about anger. Abusive people often struggle to understand and process their own emotions, so they can't recognize when they're feeling jealous and examine their triggers and regulate that core emotion. So instead they resort to a secondary emotion of anger and they have these outbursts, which is why an abusive person will often try to behave very possessive and angry when they feel jealous, and they'll try to control you in ways that are scary rather than endearing. Like, there's a difference between someone saying, "Hey baby, earlier I saw this message pop up on your phone from someone with a heart emoji. I was just wondering what that was about." And you can just tell it's like tearing them up inside. They're just feeling really scared, versus them just grabbing your phone angrily and starting to yell at you. So to go into this control aspect a little bit more, they might try to control you through emotional blackmail. I have a whole video on this if you want to check it out. Kind of goes in depth into what emotional blackmail actually is. So they might try to like give you financial gifts or financial support so that you owe them. They might encourage you to leave your job so that you are again dependent on them financially and don't have access to that other network of people. They might try to trap you into having kids with them against your consent, things like tampering with your birth control. They might slowly give you more and more advice on what you should wear or where you should go, and then that advice turns into full-on restrictions. They might monitor your whereabouts, your social media, etc. The point is that soon they will be able to control your whole life, including whether or not you're able to leave them. Intimidating or threatening behavior is also an early red flag. Things like hitting objects, smashing things, saying things like, "I really want to punch you right now," or "I hate you," having body language that suggests emotional dysregulation that's gotten out of control, such as like puffing up their chest, hovering over you, yelling at you real close to your face, like putting a finger in your face. The point of this, whether consciously or unconsciously, is to scare you into backing down. And I think this is a huge one, because if someone has no issue threatening you with the underlying possibility of violence, they most likely have no issue actually following through on that violence. Because the message that it sends is, I cannot control my emotions right now. I don't know what I might do, but I'm not the type of person to internalize strong emotions. I externalize them, so you should watch out. Let me tell you, I've had extremely powerful emotions in my time, but I have never behaved in a threatening way, no matter how angry I feel. Be very wary of people whose emotional dysregulation gets externalized, particularly anger. This leads me right into the next red flag, which is anger problems. Someone whose emotional profile leans a lot towards anger could be more abusive than someone whose emotional profile leans more towards anxiety or sadness or happiness or something else. Not only when they're genuinely angry, but also when they feel guilty, ashamed, afraid, jealous, sad, they also resort to anger because, like I mentioned, anger is a very, very common secondary emotion, an emotion that's meant to mask a different emotion. Someone who struggles to figure out the primary emotion underneath the anger, someone who feels angry quite frequently, who has a baseline irritability in day-to-day life, who struggles to regulate their anger, and who, like I said, externalizes rather than internalizes their anger, can be more prone to abuse. And please note that emotional dysregulation can be worsened by things like substance abuse, because substance abuse lowers impulse control. So if you combine an anger problem with substance abuse, it can lead to physical abuse or the escalation of abuse. Obviously, not everyone who struggles with substance abuse has this issue. Some people don't have emotional dysregulation or a specific anger problem or an externalization problem. But for those that do, that's really a very scary and dangerous combination for the people around them when they're drinking or abusing a different substance. Isolation is another early red flag. So they might isolate you by trying to convince you not to spend time with your friends or family, specifically trying to push people away who don't like them, getting mad at you when you go places without them, suggesting you move somewhere remote where you have no support system. Like I had a family friend one time who was in such a relationship and her husband had suggested that they move to like somewhere really far, like Tahiti, where they knew nobody, and he was already trying to like tighten the circle around her and further isolate her. That would have really been the nail in the coffin. Punishment is also a big early red flag. So they might punish you through things like stonewalling, basically giving you the silent treatment when they don't like something that you've said or done, to punish you or to get you to apologize. Playing the victim, pretending that they're being victimized or unfairly treated when you confront them about a way in which they hurt you. Saying things like, oh, I guess I'm just the worst person in the world. I don't know why you would want to be with me. Blame shifting, getting you to apologize for something that was their mistake. Well, if you hadn't done this and that, I wouldn't have yelled at you. Or, you know, I've been having such a hard time at work lately. I don't really know why you're giving me such a hard time. Point of punishing you is to, first of all, get you to conform to what they want. And secondly, not have to take responsibility for their actions. When a person's being punished, their thoughts get consumed with trying to figure out what they did wrong, how to make the situation better. So they're not thinking about what you did wrong anymore. If my cat is meowing because I forgot to feed her this morning and I spray her with the pet corrector, she's no longer thinking about the fact that she's hungry and that what I did was unfair. She just feels scared and like she did something wrong. It's the same with people. If someone is punishing you, you can't even register what it was that was wrong in the first place, because all you can register is being afraid and trying to make the situation better. And lastly, gaslighting is another early red flag, getting you to feel like you can't trust your own perception of reality. And yes, I would say this is usually more of a late stage thing, but it has these seedlings that get planted very early on in the relationship. They might tell you that your memory is terrible. It might start off as a joke, like, haha, babe, your memory sucks, oh my God. And then eventually it escalates to, well, you know you can't trust your memory, so how do you know I said that? Telling you that you're crazy or psychotic or lying. Again, it might start lighthearted, like, oh, you're so crazy, that's so wild. Denying things that you have actual evidence for, like saying, I didn't say that, to something that you actually have evidence that they said in text or that you journaled about or that you recorded them saying. A lot of different behaviors fall under this, but basically the point of gaslighting is to get you to trust their words above your perception of reality. Because if I can go cheat on you and you see it with your own two eyes and I get you to believe that it didn't happen, then I can do absolutely anything. You are completely dependent on me and completely at my mercy. In the later stages of abuse, gaslighting increases to the point where a person genuinely doesn't know if they can trust their own experiences, and that's part of the reason why sometimes it's so difficult to walk away. So those were the early red flags of abuse. I just want to be very clear that in most, if not all, of the cases I just mentioned, these red flags of abuse are abusive in and of themselves. So don't take this to mean that it could become abusive. This is just very early stage of abuse. It is already abusive. Maybe it hasn't yet progressed to more severe emotional abuse or to physical or intimate abuse, but it's still abuse and it's still never okay and always harmful. Please use the resources in the description box if you relate a lot to these signs, and get yourself to safety, because you deserve to live a life of dignity and respect and kindness. Take it from me, if your current partner doesn't give you that, someone else out there will, and at the very least, you deserve to give it to yourself. So I hope that this video is helpful. Again, my heart goes out to you if this is something you're struggling with. Let me know what other topics you'd like me to make videos about, and I will see you soon.